Hey, welcome back to the final installment of the Simple Growth Sales Automations for Lawn Care. We're going to be going over newsletters today and happy holidays. So these are going to be the final parts of your automations done by Simple Growth. And as a live webinar here, a little Martha Woodward posting on Service Autopilot. Let me get that off the screen real quick. But basically what we're going to be doing here is going over, I've got my co-host Chad Rains, who's joined us on some of the other live webinars. So whether you're catching us live now or in the replay, I want to welcome you back. And this will be the final installment. So we're just pushing to the final part of the finish line. And if you cannot get all these done immediately, it's not going to kill you, but we really recommend to make that final push. You've gotten this far, and there's a great return on investment. A lot of people think these newsletters are corny, but they're really not. For one thing, it's going to get you better email deliverability because you're consistently in their email box with engagement every month. And if they're done the right way, the way Chad and I are going to go through this, through education, it's going to drive it home. So before I turn the screen over to Chad here, I'm going to just kind of scroll down to let you know where we're at in this area here. So we're actually on this version of the webinar, I'm actually going to include happy holidays because we've forgone going into that in the welcome and wow in the 30, 60, 90. So that's what we're going to have to pull through here today. The first thing we're going to focus on is the newsletters, and then we'll dive into the happy holidays. So what could go wrong live, Chad? We're just changing it up a little bit on the fly here, but hey, it's okay. We'll get through it. No doubt about it. But as we're looking at this, everybody, no matter the automations and 5 service automations they've selected or the 3 service automations they've selected, if you're on level 1, everybody has gone through either through the website request or the office, entered in the Service Autopilot. They've received the lead letter. They've received the short-term education. 20 days to close, and now they've been converted into a client. So the clients in this instance are going to be getting the happy holidays and the newsletters. This is the area here, happy holidays, which live is not highlighted in green, but it should be, and the newsletters. And as we scroll down here, we've got some documents here for you for the newsletters, and in the updated version when you download it, we'll include the happy holiday documents as well, so you can see those. But this is a final push to the finish line to be fully up and running. And once again, any other tweaks and customizations to these automations as far as like assignments of people or timers will happen after the fact. So this is the final thing we need to do before we get to tweaking anything. And once you're up to this point and running, we normally don't see people tweaking it because it's already netting a good result and return on investment. I really suggest sticking at least the next 30 to 60, 90 days, leave it where it is, use the standard setup and get the best results. When people go in and try to tweak with their automations, that's when the results seem to diminish. So I'm going to turn it over to Chad here. So the thing I'm looking at, Chad, here is newsletters. We're going in and we're educating the potential consumer what they should be doing in their yard or home the month in advance. Great example, at least down in your neck of the woods, is crepe myrtles, or out in the Southwest. But this could be around anything. But one email that we see for newsletters that work really well is around crepe myrtles or ornamental pruning. We're talking about proper pruning techniques. We're educating the consumer. This has nothing to do with the sales pitch. It's education, and then maybe a one soft liner on the bottom. Hey, by the way, if you need some help with your ornamental pruning or crepe myrtle pruning, feel free to call us. But we want to provide education and continue to reinforce that you are the expert in providing value and you're different than competitors, because not only are your clients getting this, but your leads that haven't converted into clients and your canceled and lost estimate people in your system as well. So this is going to be an education to drive a higher perceived value. And once again, focus you as the expert in your market. So Chad, without further ado, I'll let you take the floor here. And as we're going, don't let me forget that we're diving into happy holidays at the end as well.
Yeah, no worries. So, hey, Mike, good to see you again. Excuse me. One thing that I wanted to explain is the newsletter has existed since before the internet. I mean, it is. Yeah, everyone knows what a newsletter is. You know, everyone's received one, everyone's signed up for one, either on purpose or by accident, because it is such a great system for buying back what is called mind space. So we're trying to make sure that your name, your company, your logo, everything is the forefront of somebody's mind. So the newsletter is I think it's safe to say this is the most time-consuming homework-wise of any of our automations, and that's because there's just no way for me to say, oh yeah, I have a perfect 12 months of content that I have created for you without ever having met you, without ever knowing anything about you. The newsletter has to be personal, and that's what's so important. And I just really want to take a moment to underscore that fact. If it feels canned, if it feels like, you know, you went and you bought it and everyone's buying the same verbiage, and it feels stale and it doesn't reflect your creed, your ethos, all of your marketing all pulled together, it's not going to be useful. It has to reflect you in some way. And the newsletter, just to talk on a more technical aspect, very simple. We can set it to run on whatever day of the month that you so desire. By default, I believe it goes out on the 5th. That way, it is a few days into each month, and it can be changed depending on your preference. So just be aware. But it goes out every month. We can turn certain months off if you so desire. All of the months are able to be updated on the fly, just like any other simple growth automation that we have. And yeah, the idea, as Mike said, try and do what you did with the short nurture, which is we're trying to make sure that you are the service expert, you are the provider. One thing that I've seen that was successful was to say, hey, you know, towards the middle to the usually around the 20th. It was the middle to the end of the month without being like, you've got 5 days to consider this fact. But towards the middle of the month, we would send something out that would say, just be aware, next month is going to be important for pre-emergent to put out in your beds or whatever. And that way, people would know moving into it, okay, it's time to put pre-emergent into my beds. So that way, if they are a lead who hasn't converted over, then that's what they're thinking about. Now they know, okay, this is the next big thing. Another one actually that was real was brown patch. We did send out emails that would just warn people, hey, brown patch is on the way. With North Carolina temperatures starting to get below the threshold at night, you are going to, and obviously with moisture content, especially if you're fertilizing and if you're watering, be aware that these are the signs of what it is. And so actually our not herbalist, but Mike, what's the word for someone who does things with plants? Botanist. There we go.
You put me on the spot. I have no idea. Botanist is it. That is it.
So our in-house guy actually had pictures of brown patch. And so we were able to insert those into the document. And that way, whenever they got sent out, people were like, okay, I'm looking for these lesions on the blade of the grass. So were they going to go out into their yard with a magnifying glass and look for brown patch? No, of course not. That's absurd. But they now felt empowered. If they wanted to, they could go out and do it. And whenever our techs were out there spraying, suddenly, if our guy said, hey, there's signs of brown patch, then the client thinks back and thinks, oh yeah, last month you told me about that. I know what to do. But more importantly, they know that we knew what to do. So whenever we offered them a solution to the problem, one, they already knew that they needed to be on the lookout for it. If they were on the lookout, then they could contact us already. And then whenever we were selling our preventative service, with, of course, the excellent motto, an ounce of preventative is a pound of cure. So people knew, oh, okay, I'll pay a smaller amount up front. All of this was set in motion by our newsletter. So that's the goal of the newsletter. That was a rambling story, sorry, but that's the goal, is we're trying to prime our target audience with knowledge, and that covers our butts. So that way, in the event that they do get brown patch, they're not like, you never told me anything about this mysterious fungus. Nope, we told you. And also that way, whenever we start to send out upsell, targeted, specific upsell information, then people were aware. So we're maintaining our status as a content expert. We're, of a service expert. We're getting content into their emails in order to provide them with this information. It's a value add in terms of, we're also an educational component. some people did want to unsubscribe, and that's completely fine because each Service Autopilot email has a click here to unsubscribe, and then it asks you which ones you want to unsubscribe from, and newsletter is one of the default options. So if people don't want it, then they can get out of it. But the idea is still just get in there, get your name in front of them, make sure they remember, and then educate them on the problems that they might face. That way, moving forward, they're not surprised by it. So that's a little bit about the overarching goal of the newsletter. At least down here in North Carolina, there wasn't a huge amount of information really for December into January, at least for our Bermuda clients especially. Sorry, your lawn is crunchy and brown. Not a lot of information there. So in those situations, if you do have a really specific, I know in Mike's neck of the woods, we really don't have, North Carolina doesn't have this problem. You have this big snow push. And so you could have half of your newsletters be about snow and about how you can prevent damage to your property and the importance of the plastic composite blades versus metal. Just information so that if they don't go with you for plowing, then at least they'll know what questions to ask. Alternatively, if you are in an area that has, say, a snow season or a supremely dry season or what have you, somewhere where that information isn't going to, not a lot that you can tell somebody when the grass is dead, then just we can turn those months off. So that way your newsletter isn't just grasping for straws. So it's up to you. Depends on how you want to do it. There's a humorous story that I have heard in which someone sent out a blank newsletter. It was 100% blank. It didn't have their logo. It didn't have any content on it at all. It's just a blank email with a subject line of, I don't remember which month it was, but like May's newsletter. And it was totally blank. And this business owner actually got business from it because it drove so much engagement. People emailed in to say, hey, you forgot to put your newsletter out. So he was able to send out the real newsletter after the fact, but he was still able to gin up communication with people. And that's a hot lead. That's someone who is willing to engage with you on something, which means that they're interested. So, pros and cons, but I do I very much suggest that you have content in there. That's not a guarantee, but the power of a newsletter is there. So be aware. It has some pros and some minuses, but it's 12 documents. We do suggest as best practice that you have evergreen. It's really important that you not have to have a sword of Damocles hanging over your head and think, oh golly, it's almost the 4th. I know that my newsletter goes out on the 5th. I have to sit down and make time, and it doesn't matter if the lawnmower got tossed into the pool or not. I really have to get this done, or else it'll go out blank. If you make it evergreen, if you sit down and just say, okay, I'm going to do the first 3 months today, and then you type that out, and okay, well, historically, the temperatures for brown patch are going to start to decrease around this time. It's important that we get this out, in August or in September. Then that is information that you can go ahead and put in there ahead of time. So your business, your market. That's why you're in the industry. So take a moment, consider it, and if the newsletter is an option that you want to make use of, then definitely just sit down and put that in. But I do just want to warn you, because of how time-consuming the newsletter can be and how passive a touch it is in terms of increasing email deliverability, buying back that mind share, all of this is why we have this on as the final webinar. We want to make sure that you are putting your efforts into the more immediate return on investment. Newsletter is going to cultivate over a long period of time, but you really need to get your 20 days to close done, your short nurture done, because those are the things that bing, bang, boom are going to really push sales into your business. So Mike, if you want, you can open any of the newsletters, but as I warn, they are all blank right now. We do have a very basic structure with some bullet points that each one says insert custom content here. And if you want to change up how it looks, if you want to change up really any component of this document in forms of its body, in form of content, brand it, don't brand it, it's all up to you. Oh, this one doesn't have bullet points. I apologize. I have misled. But yeah, so insert your custom copy here. Yes, please do that. And the bold lawn care news you can use January, change that too. Anything that you want to do to personalize this, feel free. These are your documents. But anyhow, that's newsletter. Again, it's a simple system. It predates the internet. It is just putting information out in front of people so that they know you're thinking about them and that you are thinking about the challenges and the peculiarities of lawn care moving to the next month. So pretty darn useful in my opinion.
Awesome, Chad. Couldn't have said it better myself. So homework-wise, want to go in and get these documents up and running. Not a sales pitch. We want to make sure it's education. Focus as yourself as an expert. Create a higher perceived value and continue that content. Like Chad said, these are going to be going out in the beginning of the month. And another thing is, if you are a little desperate for content in those winter months, if you're not year-round, one of the other things you can talk about is maybe plant healthcare inside the home in different things like that. It may be time to water, fertilize, or even dust your house plants during those winter seasons before the holidays. So that's going to be your newsletter. And as we dive in, like I said, on the fly here live, in addition, we're going to be tackling the happy holidays. So what we're going to do is go in once again under the gear icon, document editor, and under name description, HH is happy holidays. So whether in the US or Canada watching this webinar, we've got you covered. So we've got some specific examples, but obviously in Canada, we've got happy Canada Day. So that's not going to be applicable to our US basically client, but we've got the C in here for Canadians.
I don't know. There were a lot of people in North Carolina who were like, "Oh gosh, is it Boxing Day?"
So we've got our U.S. and Canadian holidays coming shortly, probably for our Australian and UK folks. We may be buttoning those in as that database grows a little bit in client base. But so main homework this time around is maybe sweep through your happy holidays very quickly. Those start with HH. And those are pretty much set them and forget them. And then we want to go through your newsletters. If we go up to the name description and put NL-M, that is going to get your monthly newsletter. Those are going to be your 12 documents, just as Chad stated. So this will bring us to the finish line. Once you're completed with your newsletters and happy holidays, please fill out the final form, and that will get us to completion, and we'll continue the final parts of your setting your Simple Growth lawn care automations up in live. So once again, from the Simple Growth team, Mike Callahan, Chad Rains, want to thank you for your time getting to the fifth and final step. Like Chad said, this is probably the least urgent part, but you've made it this far. I highly recommend spend the next few days, the next week, get this done in the next 7 days, carve out an hour or two, and knock it out. First draft is better than no draft. Education, higher perceived value, almost a soft upsell. It will be worth your time, 10, 15x far as return on investment, because you are creating more engagement, you're creating better email deliverability, and you're educating what they need to be doing in their yard or home the month in advance. And if you provide that service, why not make a quick, really soft one-liner, non-sales pitch? By the way, if you're in need of these services, we're here to help. So looking forward to you to complete your content here, your final push. Fill out the form provided. Also on the live webinar here, the PDF will be sliding in the back end. And if you're watching the replay, obviously that will be happening as well. So look forward to hearing from you when you come to final completion of the final step of your Simple Growth lawn care automations. Once again, Chad, want to thank you for joining me on the live webinar today. And Chad and I are looking forward to see you on the finish line to bring this thing to fruition.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks so much, Mike.